my biggest learning out of all of it is that the true value comes from the people, right? Giving them the capability, giving them the mindset to tackle these fresh challenges that come our way. I mean, I know some of what we want to talk today is about, AI and how that's impacting people.
If AI was sitting at a bar with you, or if AI walked past you every day, what does that relationship look like?
Now, I was going to say, if I asked you a question,
Mm.
how's your relationship been with AI? Well, how did you start, and how's that made you feel over the period of time?
Now, I would say that's where I'm at with AI. It has the potential to be my partner, but right now, it's something that I nurture to understand my world, become valuable to my world. In exchange, I will be valuable to its participation. But
You and I both know, whenever there's a boom in tech, there's not a shortage of jobs. So if you look at what's going on in AI, there should
yeah,
be far more things opening for us to get excited about. But I'm the first to admit, yes, there are concerns about the ethics behind it, about people being invested in and upskilled in. So yeah, all these things are very relevant in how people are feeling. But the one thing we have to do is we have to jump in. We cannot ignore this any longer. We didn't ignore the internet when the internet was born.
howdy you do, Mr.
Hey,
Craig Gillam?
Mr. Jason, how are
Howdy.
you? How are you?
I'm I'm at 80%, brother.
Yeah.
I'm at 80%.
Well, 80% is better than 20%, man.
I love throwing, not obnoxious, but it's just these interesting replies to someone like you, because you're a smart guy. You're very smart. So someone could have been thrown off and be like, what does 80% mean? But you actually are so encouraging. You constantly always making people feel heard. And in a way, you've got this like welcoming challengingness about you. So that was very intentional. I was just like, let me try
Well,
something
listen,
with
I mean,
Craig.
we've been on too many talks now, and we like to have some fun, don't we? So that's a good thing.
That's true. That's true. Craig, thank you so much for joining me on my second restart of Professional Pillar Talk.
Nice
Um,
one.
this is a platform that we're gonna get naked fast, right? And
Okay.
if you allow me, I just want to
Okay.
peel one or two things
Uh,
off
well,
as we go, but I won't go
you know
too
me. I'm
fast.
gonna I'm gonna ask you some questions.
Yeah, no, Craig. I'd love to start with, where do you remember when we first met? Which gives a bit of color to our relationship. Like, do you remember where we first met?
So I reached out, saw that you were in London town, and
Mm-hmm.
we hooked up in London, and had a fantastic get together first evening. Tried to put the world to rights. Discussed
True.
coaching,
Yes.
and yeah, it was fantastic. And I think we were so excited by the first meeting, we had to meet again the next week. So yeah,
Yes,
haven't
we did a
forgotten.
round two.
Yeah.
So true, true, true. That is true, Greg. And what I remember is, of course, you're a client of ours at FTC. So the relationship, from my perspective, when you reached out, I was like, oh wow, okay, a client wants to meet. Of course, yes, you need to meet a client. Like, and you do the client
Yeah,
protocol,
yeah, yeah.
right? You come and meet, and you wine and dine. But it was actually so much more than that. I feel like I met an old friend, and I don't say that
Mm.
lightly, because it gelled so well. I didn't feel when we sat down that I was like, wait, this is somebody who's paying a healthy retainer to us, because you are. Thank you, Craig. Um, it was somebody I could just converse with. We got open. We actually did get naked with on a few topics, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I remember from our first interaction. But I do a little bit of digging, and I only know so much about you, and you come from a consulting background, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What was your experience like in consulting
So,
when you were? Yeah, yeah. Go for it.
not to, and you can pivot me where you need to. I started my career in South Africa with Anderson Consulting.
Mm,
And I think it's just been a 30-year journey of always wanting to do the best in, I suppose, my niche is transforming organizations and transforming people. And I suppose you just start building that ethos of wanting to make a difference.
hmm
The early years were very much deep rooted in tech, and all the new tech that we were taking advantage of. We were moving away from mainframe, and we were moving into client server, and we were getting very focused on the customer and the product. And you know what? The evolutions are almost like revolutions, right? But they're very repeatable. um, and my biggest learning out of all of it is that the true value comes from the people, right? Giving them the capability, giving them the mindset to tackle these fresh challenges that come our way. I mean, I know some of what we want to talk today is about AI and how that's impacting people, but
hmm
I think it's the same through the ages, right? It's giving people the courage or the empowerment to experiment with technology, because I think you and I both know, whenever there's a boom in tech, there's not a shortage of jobs. So if you look at what's going on in AI, there should
Yeah.
be far more things opening for us to get excited about. But I'm the first to admit, yes, there are concerns about the ethics behind it, about people being invested in and upskilled in. So yeah, all these things are very relevant in how people are feeling. But I feel quite privileged to have been through a wave in my career where tech's always been at the heart of that change, but needing to understand how people can harness that to make the organization better, but also make their lives better.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to chat about someone who is very close in your life. You've helped her along her life since she was born. Your young daughter, and I understand
Yeah,
that she
yeah,
just
yeah,
left the home. I did some digging. You said that you have an empty nest now.
yeah, yeah.
So Craig is a dad.
You-
Craig is a wife. You know what? How was that experience, Craig? Like, your
Look, I
daughter
mean,
leaving the home.
it's I've taken it with a lot of joy, actually. I think it's well, one's got to feel blessed that your daughter actually is excited about leaving home. That's I think that's a great thing. So it's a new chapter. Um, and there's two emotions that I love. I call it the 10x emotion, and it's that feeling of excitement and overwhelmed. And I saw that with Charlotte, my daughter, and but more excitement than anything. So when we
Mhm.
took her to university, there was almost pure joy. And when we dropped her off, 3 hours later, she was asking when we were leaving. So he's just like, so it's you feel that it's just part of the journey in life, but really exciting. And it was just a joy to see her being so excited about the new chapter.
That's so true. There's always going to be change in life, whether it's a change in job, whether it's a spouse
Yeah, yeah,
moving places, whether there's a daughter leaving the house. I think change is a constant. I think. Have you ever watched Stutz with Jonah Hill on Netflix?
I haven't actually.
It's a great film where Jonah Hill talks about his journey with his psychologist,
Okay.
and he talks about all his deepest darkest shadow. But there's three things that are constant in life, and one of them is change,
Yeah,
and the other one is pain, and the other one is constant work, if I'm not mistaken. I think those are the three things that are constant in life. There will always be change, there will always be pain, and there will always be constant work, whether that be working on yourself, whether that be
yeah,
working
yeah,
for a job. There will always be work, and it segues quite well into what we're speaking about today, which is this introduction of this new technological change, AI. And I've got the three key words for me is workplace EQ,
Yep.
then there's psychological security, and how AI either, which I'm interested to know, enhances the workplace EQ, or maybe it actually doesn't, the opposite. And maybe also in terms of the psychological security, does it actually create or diminish security in the workplace? And before we dive into that, I want to ask Craig, what's your relationship with AI?
So I've certainly feel quite comfortable over the last 18 months of being heavy experimentation. I think I
Mm,
was one of the first to sign up to the sort of chat GBT before anyone knew about it. But you picked up so much noise with that. You picked up the negativity around it as well. A lot of people that I worked with was, well, why would you want some help scripting an article, as an example, when you should be writing that yourself? And I think if you don't experiment with these things, you're not skilling yourself up, and you're then saying, because the thing that I've really loved about it, and I think I'm a, I'd probably say I'm quite, having some people are hugely rooted into AI predictive analytics and how that's driving, improved customer service. There is so much out there. But for me, I think that experimenting and giving an environment that you can feel comfortable in, I think when you talk about the psychology behind it, you start feeling comfortable. So I think when
mm,
you talk about security and, not to complicate the words like psychological flexibility or security, I mean, the most important thing is, I think, is to experiment. Um,
mm,
and I certainly learned that I could augment what I do a lot quicker, so that if there was something that I could focus on more, for example, relationships is one of the things I love, right?
mm,
Um,
mm,
Having more time for relationships and building relationships is certainly something that AI has given me and the business. I've loved that. But I do see in the workplace. I mean, there are many different workers, right? So if you take people in call centers, they're seeing a lot of generative AI scripting coming through. A lot of what they're doing is under threat. Um, Organizations are talking about, less need for the humans, but in actual
mm,
fact,
mm,
there can be a different type of thinking, and that's how can we use the AI to better serve the customers, but then how can we use our employees to reskill, to retrain, be focusing on sort of product rejuvenation. There's so many other things. It's a case of using
yeah,
the workforce, um, and the energy, I think, should come that if we keep on accelerating the augmentation, I think we can get excited, but we've got to be. I think the third thing that jumps off a page for me is putting AI in place in sort of an ethical way. There's a lot
mm,
out there that um, generative AI is off data, right? So there's biases, the source data. But what's getting good about generative AI is now we're starting to see like ChatGPT being able to evidence the source data, which we couldn't see previously. So
yes,
I
that's so
think,
true.
as human beings, we start, maybe this will help us starting to build the trust.
Yeah, yeah,
But I mean, I saw a quick little snippet about, there's nothing like artificial intelligence. There's intelligence. It's not about artificial intelligence. It's about algorithms that are looking through data and, reading the data in such a way that they are learning and learning and learning, and
hmm,
that way you're getting the predictive analytics, being able to better serve customers. So yeah, I'm sort of going off
mm.
on a tangent, but I think
No,
I think
I think it's a good tangent. Yeah.
there's a big message on experimenting, or at least in companies allowing people to experiment and get comfortable.
Mm, mm. And you're a business guy, and you've been in corporate. You've running your own business now. But when I talk about a relationship, and relationships are important to you,
Yeah.
if AI was sitting at a bar with you, or if AI walked past you every day, what relationship, what does that relationship look like? Is it a relationship where you experiment with each other, but you don't talk to each other? Is it a relationship where you are the father, AI is the son? Like, personify that relationship for me so that I can understand what you and AI's relationship looks like, please.
Yeah. And you're asking, so I'd almost be a bit lawyer like and say, in my opinion, yeah, because, everyone's going to have a different view. But I
Yeah.
would like to think, I would like to have a relationship with AI where we can work in partnership to get the best value from each other. Um,
Mm,
so with that relationship, if you sort of humanize this relationship, it's got to be built on how we can help each other. So if
hmm.
if something can allow me to do a better job, to better serve the companies that I'm working for the individuals that you're trying to help with mindset, with transforming their lives, you'd be silly not to have a great relationship with that person, and that person is
Yes.
called AI. Um,
Mm,
so when we put that human cap on, it's a similar type of relationship, right? We've now met face to face on numerous occasions, and you just feel completely uncomfortable. And I
mhm.
think it's the same with AI. We've got to. I'm a bit of an AI influencer that I talk to quite regularly. I should introduce you is Kieran Gilmurray, and I
Okay.
did a podcast with him a few months ago, and he said, "Look, there is a lot of noise out there, but the one thing we have to do is we have to jump in. We cannot ignore this any longer. We didn't ignore the internet when the internet was born. And then everyone was saying, "Do you have internet banking experience?" And it's much like then everyone's on a PC, and then the next question is, "Do you have any digital experience?" And I don't know how you meant to answer that. Are you meant to answer, "No, I only have a piece of paper and a pen. I don't know what a computer looks like." But all these stages, they're very similar. It's accepting them, trusting them, and that only comes with experimenting and having a relationship.
Yeah, no, I like that. A partnership relationship is, it's beautiful. It's a give and
Yeah,
take, if I understand correctly. It's evolving all the time, because partnerships that are linear die
yeah,
actually, because the more linear it is, it becomes boring, and the one will feel that the other's gaining more. So it's actually, it's almost like, it's like a dice. It's like it's always got to keep doing a bit like this, but going
yeah,
forward
yeah,
and up, right?
yeah.
Because if it's doing a lot of this but not moving forward, then I think in a partnership we get bickering, because it's like,
Mm,
wait, we've been going back and forth on this thing, but I feel like my bank account hasn't grown, my knowledge
mm.
hasn't grown, my relationships hasn't grown. So I like that. Partnerships interesting, and I think why I asked that question is yeah.
Now, I was going to say, if I asked you a question,
Mm,
how's your relationship been with AI? Well, how did you start, and how's that made you feel over the period of time?
mm. So my relationship started with AI from a distance.
Yeah,
I heard about this person, right? I
yeah,
learned so much about this person before meeting the person. I'd had already such a preconceived idea before
yeah,
even engaging.
yeah,
So that relationship started with preconceived ideas,
yeah.
and more
And
than it needed to have. Those
yeah,
preconceived ideas were, you're only going to be an assistant to me. That's it.
yeah,
Use AI as an assistant, right? It's a research tool, right? And then there was AI can only help you with tasks. It's task driven, right?
yeah,
So all these things were created this figure in my mind, and then I heard a podcast by Mo Gawat and Stephen, where
yeah,
they talk
yeah,
about AI being a child, and it's never going to, it needs me to teach it on how to live in my world, right?
Yeah,
Because it's been introduced to my world, and I need to nurture it so that it becomes a good citizen of my world, right?
yeah,
And right now, I would say that's where I'm at with AI. It has the potential to be my partner, but right
yeah,
now it's something that I nurture to understand my world, become valuable to my world. In exchange, I will be valuable to its participation. But for me, I see AI as almost like a becoming an adolescent at this time in my world, and we're
yeah,
actually now competing a little bit, like
yeah,
on the rugby field. Like, oh, I can see you've got a bit of speed there now. But I've still got you, right? I
They
can
just
see you can catch the
they're
ball.
not
You've
tackling you yet, though. They're not tackling you
they're
yet.
not they're not tackling me yet, but I've always had respect for AI, but I've got this new respect because of its evolution and its growth to what I like, and I value growth. I value change, and it's that's my relationship now, right now, with AI.
Yeah, yeah. And look, I know you haven't asked us, but we mustn't forget that as people, we resist change naturally,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's so this is less to do with AI. It's more to do with human nature, right?
true.
And it's more to do with that. Our instinct is, it's just like Lewis Howes. I really enjoy him. He talks about three fears. Often it's the fear of failure, the fear of success, believe it or not. I mean, it can be an inhibitor,
And
and
probably
the
the
fear of
fear
judgment.
of death. Oh, of
There's the whole
judgment.
there's,
Okay.
yeah, fear of judgment, and strangely enough, judgment is the biggest thing, which is like, what will people think? What will people think of And I think this is often what's holding us back. But I think it's a positive message that organizations and people experimenting in all walks of life, but with AI and its emergence now, because it's not new anymore and it's evolving at such a rate. The thing that's improving is the data, right? People
Mm,
always forget that, and we're now coming up with there are gender biases in our data. So all of a sudden, AI is behaving in a way that it's taking us backwards and becoming a little bit sexist. There's all these things, but then you realize, like you said, it was a great sort of analogy of being a baby, AI being a baby, and
mm,
you've got to help it with the information that it's processing so that it's actually not having the biases. And it's also, there's a lot of IP out there that's being threatened because it's just harvesting and it doesn't know whether that data is actually got any intellectual property rights, etc., and it's just throwing it out there. um,
yeah.
so yeah, there is a whole world out there that we need to bring into the context. But I keep going. I loved what Kieran Gilmurray said, and it's like, just get in with your boots and all. We just got to get in, got to muck in now.
Mm. Yeah, and I think some companies are getting in and some
Yeah,
companies aren't. And you make a very cool um, mention that the data sets are getting a lot more enriched, and it's learning better data sets.
yeah, yeah,
Those data sets are need to be fed, right? And there's only so much processing power these tools can get to create the different models. But right now, AI is meant to be an enabler. And if we're in the workplace, from what you've seen, from your experience, and I would love to know some examples.
yeah,
Productivity is sometimes the the difference in two very good companies, because you can have the best strategy, you can have the best people, but like a car, if the tools if the cogs of a car don't match each other efficiently around a track, that's mainly the main difference in winning and losing, right?
yeah.
Would you say AI as a productivity tool increases or like, empowers or dispowers employees?
Do you know? It's a good question. That I think a lot of it's got to do with mindset, but I'd like to stick on the positive that it empowers. Um,
Mm,
But what do I mean by that is if you have a willingness to test out what AI can do for you, especially generative AI. I think what you'll soon learn is that, I mean, I can give some examples. As a consultant, you'll often be asked a question that invariably you know the answer, but to get it down might take you, let's say, a week, right? You can actually get some best practice just by doing a search on generative AI. It'll give you something in a minute, it's 5 seconds, right?
Hmm.
But in actual fact, then you've got to use your talent and your experience to assimilate that and to probably really delve into the data and how it's making those assumptions. So it's testing out the truth. But what you can come to is what I would say is a proposal or a suggestion on how to tackle something in 2 days rather than five.
Mm.
And I suppose there's been some great studies. I think everyone quotes the BCG study, right? Which they put a team on a client, and literally they saw 40% upliftment in productivity against what their normal benchmarks were.
What was
Um,
that test? Like, what did they do differently?
do differently. So I think what they had at their disposal was the ability to harvest data sets that otherwise were just not at there. It was all Most consultancy firms will always lean on their best practice. Where have we done this before? So to be fair, I grew up in Anderson that became Accenture. They had a knowledge exchange, which you could argue was the infancy of AI, because we just used to go into this knowledge exchange to try find out where we had done it before. Now we get data that's harvesting almost sets around the world, and it's coming back with not just facts; it's actually coming back with insight. And you can generate that to help you if you're shaping a strategy for a business. You'll often look
Mm.
at brand vision strategy, how you might execute. You can get ahead of the game, but then I would always say, do not ignore then getting in the human aspect to really tackle that, take it apart, put it back together. And 9 times out of 10, you've probably saved yourself half the time. But you've given your
Mm.
time to focus on other things that can make it an even better experience for an individual, for an organization. So we the augmentation, I think, is powerful. It's
Mm.
we have a partner here that can help us be our best selves.
Yes.
um, what we must be careful of, though, is when the expectation becomes that we need to perform at twice the pace we used to. I think that's what we need to be careful of. I don't think
Oh, that is
that,
interesting.
that's a whole different discussion that we probably
That is
we should,
that,
we should
that is a
probably avoid.
whole different.
But
Yeah.
I think if we can actually um, grab this and go, this can help me do a better job. And I love the talking about having freedom of time. If you've got time on your hands to think, I think that's a really powerful thing as a human being. So I think that for me is one of the great advantages of generative AI and where we are going with just using data in a far more valuable way. But we've got to realize how to use data, ethically, and there is a lot being placed on that now. So I think that's the important aspect that we're going to have to watch very carefully in industry over the next 2 to 3 years.
I love the fact that you say time to think, because you always have time. Like, it's a decision to what you do with that time, because the fact that, yes, you need to keep the lights on, you need to eat,
Yeah.
those are decisions that are more inclined for you to force you to do them, but you don't have to. You have autonomy, right? But the more now time you have, perceived free time, you should put it to thinking, because I think there's a craving to do more and think less, right? Or there's this just general idea that the hustle mentality. I need to be doing more, and by doing more, I can create more free time to do nothing, right? Because we
Yeah.
all want to sip pina coladas at the beach.
Yeah.
But I love what you said, because it's actually, I should do the right thing to create more time to think that will give me a sweeter piece of time to do particularly nothing, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's so well put, because I think of Einstein, and he was a thinker, apparently. I haven't met him, but whatever they say about him, he was a thinker. So,
You'd have to get
and
in your
like,
time machine. You'd have to get in your time
I,
machine.
I'd have to get in my time machine. But the little that I've seen across the internet, and like other key people who speak about him, they say he used to create a habit of putting himself into a certain frame of mind to think, like a task. Like, you know how creatives know that they need to get into a certain mindset to um, create.
Yeah.
Sportsmen know that they need to get into the gym to build. Thinking was a asset for him. And one
Yeah.
of the craziest thing I also heard is procrastination was one of them too. And he used to actually put like a spoon in his mouth and drift off into like boredom. And the moment he like actually fell into sleep, it was actually the difference in when a good idea
Yeah. Yeah.
and the solution was found. I'm like, because you know, like when you go shower or when you're just about to nap, there's that one good idea, but you wake up and you're like, what? Oh, I had the solution. I wish I wrote
Oh,
it
yeah.
down.
Yeah.
He actually
No,
put a
I mean,
spoon or some.
yeah, I love walk. I go walking, just to
Mm,
every time I go for a walk, I'm almost running back because the ideas are streaming in, and I just so it
yes.
is. It's. But I do think we are going to be challenged though in a way that we can think differently, right? Um,
Mm,
we can, those mundane tasks now potentially could be taken away, but there's also intelligent tasks that we can be augmented with and supporting. Um,
mm,
so a lot more creative energy can be used. But in some respects, we've disadvantaged ourselves because we've given up some of that side of our brain. So there is this reskilling and retraining that we all, I think, are going to have to go through. But it's a relationship that I think needs to be different for everyone. Um, but again, I just think it's that word relationship or partnership, which I like, is probably just go and have it. Just get out there and have a relationship, and then make it meaningful for you, because it shouldn't be forced on you. But in the
yes.
workplace, there is a lot being forced, and that's where I think organizations could help by just providing a bit more training and a bit more upskilling, um, and also thinking about how does it impact the workforce, because there might be a shift in, we talked about call center staff. We could get call center staff shifted to focus on, let's say, some more product related work, because they'd have time. They understand customers because they're often at the coal face, right? They're hearing, and often,
Wow.
you wouldn't bring them into the product
Product
conversations, but all of a
design.
sudden, if you got 30% more time from people who are hearing every single bad thing about your product, bring them into the room and look, I'm making this up a bit as I'm going here. Um, what a wonderful opportunity, right? So I think we've always got to try. There's always going to be negative, but if we can try uncover the positives in these situations, that would be great.
You know what? I'm gonna try something, because that was so good. I have to do something here.
Now you've got me worried.
Let's try this, and there we go. And we're gonna. I had to try that.
Olympics. You've never done that before.
Craig, that's so interesting, right? And interesting is a crutch word. My partner always says, Jason, whenever you say interesting, you actually make me feel like you're not listening because you're not using your
Yeah.
words. So, so
Yeah.
what it actually made me feel is it was creative. It's creative in terms of execution, time, resource allocation, but with that comes effectiveness and
Yeah.
dependency, right?
Yeah.
You could increase the uptake of your team to be more effective, but they now might have a dependency on the introduction of AI,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How does that mitigate? How do you mitigate that? Like, I'm now a creative, and I know that I need to interview Craig, ask him the right questions, put it into ChatGPT, and I'll be able to create a logo. Now I
Yeah.
might there's nuances in there that create beautiful design, which is the nuances of like context, the nuances of like human touch, behavior, smell, taste.
Yeah.
But AI doesn't have that. So I can go through asking the right questions, putting it in ChatGPT. ChatGPT, I read it, then put it back into Mid Journey. Here's your logo. Boom. And that's how I produce logos. Efficient, but I think slightly dependent.
Yeah. And there's no right answer here, right? Because there's always going to be the danger that we do become over reliant. That's human nature. Um, but I think there is an element of, we talked about having more time. So something I read recently, there's a lot of development being automated through generative AI, right? So all of a sudden, should we worry about there is a need for less developers? In actual fact, there's never been such demand for engineers. In actual
Hmm.
fact, they've now got more time to make sure that the code quality is significantly better than it ever has. Areas that are of huge concern is around security and cybersecurity. So now, if we use these technologies correctly, we can actually focus on the areas that have opened up and become really concerning, and we can even get AI, like that analogy of the baby, and help them with how we solve cybersecurity. But in actual fact, we should keep on seeking how we can complement what we're getting, because I think you mustn't forget the data that we're getting these algorithms to generate feedback to us is data that we've created in the first place. It's come, it's been harvested by us as human beings.
So what does that mean? So the fact that it's data that humans have created, but AI is condensed, or let's say making it more accessible for us to dissect or in some way translate for us to experiment on. What
Yeah.
does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Why should I know that? Why should that bring me comfort?
I think it should. I mean, it's much. I've worked with a lot of lawyers in my time for my sins. I love lawyers actually, but the best phrase that I've the best phrase that I've learned from lawyers actually is "in my opinion." So it's
Okay.
like if you're looking for a straight answer, the answer that you get is "in my opinion." Now, the reason why that's used is there's normally five cases that they're looking at to try give you an answer, and all of those cases have been somewhat similar, somewhat different. So, let's say to give a new judgment, let's say, they might say, well, in my opinion, if I look at what happened in case one and case three, I think that's the closest. I'm therefore making my decision based on that. Another lawyer might say something completely different. I think we're going to find the same. So, I think we've got to take until we get really good at understanding the sources of data. And this has been a huge challenge, right? Around we're getting everything fed back and go, well, where does that data come from? And no one really knows. Now we're starting to see the sources become available. So
Mm.
there is a little bit of validating. It's a funny thing to say, validating our own homework. If ChatGPT is producing some of our homework, it's saying it's getting us there 100 times faster. At least make it 80 times faster by spending that extra 10%, just making sure it's accurate or reflective of, so you can say, in my opinion, I've got confidence in that. So that scrutiny,
Mm.
I think, is important. Um,
Mm.
am I making
No.
sense, by the way?
No, you make a lot of sense because you made an interesting comment that let's not forget that it's data we produced, and I've never heard like I knew that, but
Yeah,
that's true. Like AI may recreate data, true, because once AI starts talking to AI, given the fact that it was a human data point, if I'm not correct, it is creating a new data point, right? Or
yeah,
unless it's not, what I'm understanding then is it's a data point that has been put into AI and it's then amalgamated with other data points. It's spat out some truth. Another AI model has, of course, been. I don't think actually then it wouldn't create a new data point. It would be just an amalgamation of two AI points
yeah.
talking and created an amalgamation of human data. So where does that happen? Because you made such a clear point where don't forget AI is written or AI is reading human data. That's true because then it's
Yeah.
like why are we scared? Why are we so scared of it? Like why?
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think there's something we haven't touched on, and I think this is really powerful, and we have to be skeptical a little bit, and that's just ongoing artificial learning, right? And I don't like the word artificial, but we've now got machines, algorithms that are sifting through data and learning as they're doing. Now that's incredibly powerful. And if as long as we can control that, I think there are huge benefits. I mean, especially if you think about in medical, in the bio and pharma industries, where finding a cure for cancer, um, all of a sudden we can throw every bit of medical science into a data mine, and we can try find through machine learning and just ongoing learning. I mean, there is some real excitement in the pharma industry, the biopharma industry, how we potentially can find cures because we can now go through data and volumes of data that we've never been able to. So
Mm,
it's and then the human element will always come back in, right? To test that, to validate it,
mm,
and continuously look how can we keep improving. And it's I just someone said to me, and I said this earlier. I love the fact that they said, "Well, when has tech ever created less jobs?" And look, shoot me for saying it, but I just think there's going to be more jobs than we can handle because
mm,
of AI, not the other way around. But there's always got to be that skepticism to start. And I often say this. I think you've heard me say it. I mean, it's not for everyone either, right? If someone wants
mm,
to write a book from start to finish, um, and they love to do it just by writing on paper, and then they'll get someone to type it up. So be it. If someone wants to actually test out some themes and do some things with generative AI to get some buzz a lot quicker. It doesn't make the two different. It's just the style of the author, and I think we've just got to respect that. I think there's got to be that respect today, but we do have an opportunity to augment our performance and have a great friendship with generative
that's so
AI.
true. Like yeah, and because there's those big data sets, I think what AI has done is it's allowed for faster learning, right? Faster
Yeah,
learning, larger models, lot of like those data farms that like our like smartwatches. Like there's these
yeah,
data farms that are just untouched, right?
yeah,
And AI is going to allow for us to run different models quickly, and we can learn about humans faster. True,
yeah, yeah,
but then what makes, and this is an interesting one, and let's cycle back to the workplace because I think we've cycled
yeah,
like
yeah,
somewhere down into the ether. Let's cycle back into the workplace. Like human qualities are very interesting. Like what makes for a human quality? So what are the difficult AI human qualities that can be replicated or replaced, especially in the workplace, right? So I know in the workplace what makes for a good human quality is the receptionist or the front door guy or lady that makes me feel that this is a company of integrity. That like it, I don't need. I don't think. I think it's like, oh wow, a company that makes me feel at home. That's wrong. Like,
Yeah.
because many people's homes are like so different. Maybe your home is like, if maybe you were having a bad time at home because you're going through a divorce. I went to an office that made me feel at home. You don't want to feel at home. So I think that there's a key word there where it's like they made me feel probably this place is trustworthy. Made me feel that this place has people of integrity. Those are elements of a good home, right? So
Yeah.
w- the human skill to be human. Where is AI replicating or replacing in the workplace?
Um, Look, I think one of the things it's doing is it's empowering people. If you're willing to embrace it, um, and that's a great feeling to be having, right? Empowerment, because I think it's the seed of innovation. When you feel
Mm.
empowered, you feel inclined to innovate. You feel inclined to want to surround yourself with groups of people thinking in a similar way. And when we get to the psychology of us as humans, when we are in that positive mindset, it's just going to be a more productive day, right? A more productive month, a more productive year. Um, but there is quite a lot of power from AI coming with predictive analytics, right? Which can actually help us. So this is where it can help, where it can actually help us better serve customers. It can help us. Um, you talked about, what makes you feel good about coming into an office. I mean, AI can look at the demographic of the average people coming into the office during a day, and give you some sense as to how you might want to meet and greet them. I mean, there's, I haven't been into any places doing this yet, but the technology is there. Um, that can help us. And again, it gives us. I just think we've got something that can help us with our own relationships, with other human beings. We can actually get better at relationships. We can use this to get better with people ourselves.
That's so true. And I only say it's true because I have seen that empowerment of AI because I have a relationship with this guy called Garth. And we partner with each other because I think he does good work. But he's shown me how his smarts that he puts into ChatGPT spits out a lot of what he produces. But our relationship is so stuck because of the production of what he um produces, right? Like what he
Yeah, yeah,
produces makes me feel inspired to like want to work with him more, right? So
yeah,
that empowerment that he has empowered him to have a has granted him the opportunity to have a better relationship with me, which is interesting, right? It's like I've never really thought of it in that way because my thinking is like the workplace psychological security is like one of the most important things to have a healthy workforce, right? Because like I've read about it, and of course I've worked for myself. I've worked in teams, and I'm working in a larger team. I've never thought about my psychological security, mainly because maybe I think that I have it on lock. But when I
yeah,
think about what that means, is it's the ability for me to self actualize because the tasks I'm doing make me feel like a professional, right?
yeah.
I don't think if I'm like, please correct me, like psychological
Absolutely,
security
and,
around the
and
workplace.
it's also shifting your thinking to be positive, and the emotions too. Because if you get those two nicely balanced, you're going to drive results that you actually probably after. Often people call them goals or habits you're trying to focus on. Um, but I love to think about psychological flexibility, right? Or even like what we call emotional agility, which is, um, you know, you can pivot if you need to Do you know what I mean? You don't get so set in your ways of thinking. You can actually adjust because you know that that adjustment will create a positive outcome. And I think these are the type of things that we are going to have to adjust and be comfortable adjusting with the likes of AI because we'll see benefit that we otherwise didn't anticipate a week before. But it might actually make you feel uncomfortable. Um, so there is the emotional side that's actually is quite complicated. But I think if we work in an environment where you're given a little bit of freedom to experiment, you're also there is some investment in upskilling, in reskilling, even um, all of a sudden you can start brokering an environment where you're feeling a bit safer. You can experiment, be more innovative, and it does to the point. You get back to that word. You can create, an empowered workforce. Again, through technology. But we always got to remember, right? I use the expression: if you put technology in front of the customer, or you talk about the tail wagging the dog. I think it's always important to understand there's a human, there's a customer, and as long as we are putting that in front and ensuring how the tech can enable that to either be a better relationship, a high performing person, organization, I think we'd be doing the right things.
No, you've
You got
killed it. That's a great way to sort of segue into our last section, Craig. Like, I really enjoyed this conversation. But before we close off, I've got a little bit of a game that I would love to play with you. Is there any question I haven't asked you?
Any question? What's my middle name?
What is your middle name, Craig?
Foster. Foster's
Foster.
beer.
Foster.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Bad middle
nice.
name. Yeah, no, that's the. How's that?
No,
I got you there, didn't I?
you did. You did get me there.
Yeah, yeah,
um, cool. I do actually have a question for you.
yep.
Before we get into my little game, with all that we've said, right? AI is something that you need to jump into. AI is something that you need to have a relationship with. It has a dark side where too much dependency can cause the human to lose its humanness,
Mm,
but it also has its massive uptake on how humans could become more human and lean into better relationships and growth.
yeah.
Um, if you had to start a business or a community or a family, again, with AI as a tool, what's the one thing you would want AI to help you with when either starting a business, either starting a community, or either starting a family? What would its role, what would its partnership look like? And choose one. Oh, Jason, I'm going to start a business and I see AI helping me in my business with this. Oh, Jason, I want to start a community. Yeah, so forth. What would that look like? So
Do you
choose
know?
one and then let me know.
In all of them, I think I would say something quite similar. So if it was family or work, I would say using AI to make sure we can have better relationships with each other, um, better relationships with customers. And that in turn often for me creates better products, better outcomes. But if we can, and this is quite soft, right? Soft skill stuff. If we can use tech to help us have better relationships, to make us and organizations better people, better places, wow, we've done something right, haven't we?
Wow, that's a very profound, simple yet complex in its doing. Right,
Yeah.
to get relationships right is it's not hard. It's not easy. But yeah, Craig, the last game here I want to play
And
is it's
now
it's
you
it's
got
a
me
simple
in.
game.
Anticipation, yeah.
Yeah, it's a simple
I'm
game.
getting nervous. I'm getting nervous.
Don't get nervous. It's a simple game where I'm going to be asking you an either or category
Mhm.
question. It's either this or either that. And there's six of them. And you've got, I'm going to give you 45 seconds, right? My last guest failed, didn't get through all of them in 30 seconds. My previous guest won. She got it in 1 minute. I think you could get it in 45 seconds, right?
Okay,
Do you understand the game?
you've got me so intrigued. I've got no idea what's coming my way.
Are you ready? You've got 45 seconds. I'm gonna put this on. And you've got 45 seconds, Craig. You've just gotta go, and it's simple. It's either this or either that. Let me know when you're ready. Are you ready, Craig?
Yeah, I've got you. I'm ready.
Okay. Three, two, one, go. Food, sweet or savory?
Savory,
Travel, beach vacation or mountain vacation?
mountain vacation,
Relationship, spontaneous date or planned getaway?
spontaneous,
Fitness, morning workout or evening run?
evening run,
Mindset, meditation or journaling?
meditation,
Learning, podcast or books? 10 seconds.
podcasts.
Boom! The man did it. I love it. I love it. I have to give you a little bit of a clap again, Craig. That was
Oh, no.
good. You actually could have done it in 30 seconds. You are class. That
Oh,
is proper. Craig, thanks so much. And as we close off, would love to know where we could find you. What's your journey looking like in terms of 10x? And yeah, maybe just a closing words.
Yeah, so listen, can reach out. Got my personal brand website, craiggillum.com. Trying to do good by people, just being useful with Think Different as building a community. Business focus, Socium 10x. The ethos is transforming businesses, transforming individuals, making a difference, making a difference in people's lives for the positive. So, yeah, I'm very taken by being useful. So, Jason, it's always a pleasure. I always enjoy our time.
Craig, you are a very useful man. You're actually more than useful. You're a genuine legend, right? You're an absolute living legend. I appreciated this conversation, and I'm sure we're going to do it again. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Listen, nice one. Good to catch up, Jason.